medial bone. This is the bone that the Achilles tendon attaches to, the triceps surae that I'll show you. The navicular sits just anterior, just in front of the talus. And then the medial cuneiform sits just in front of the navicular. And then we have the metatarsals and phalanges like we had metacarpals and phalanges on the hand. Now, from a superior view, you can see this sequence that I just taught you, the talus and the calcaneus, and then the navicular here, the medial cuneiform, and you can see three bones all with the same name, just in position, medial, intermediate, and lateral for the cuneiforms. And then this thing that looks like an ice cube on the lateral side here, the cuboid. These are the bones that we call the tarsals. Here are the metatarsals, 5 of those, and phalanges, and just like on the hand, a proximal and a distal here, but no middle on the pollex, on the hallux, just like we had on the pollex. The hallux, the big toe, the pollex, the thumb. So 2 here, 3 here, middle, proximal, middle, and distal for these phalanges, and just 2 on the big toe and on the thumb. Now, here are the muscles I want you to know in order from anterior to posterior. The first one here, I've got them numbered so we don't forget them. The tibialis anterior attaches to the lateral condyle. That makes sense. If you feel the front of your leg, if you put your hand on the front of your leg, there is no muscle there. That is bone. So, the only way to feel muscle is to go medial or lateral. If you push medial, you still got bone. If you push lateral, you got muscle. And that muscle is the tibialis anterior. You see where it is? It is on the lateral condyle of the tibia. And then it attaches to the medial cuneiform. So, it's on the lateral condyle, but it's a muscle on the front. It's going to do, as you can see obviously here, this muscle is going to do dorsiflexion for the foot. Okay, the next one in line is the extensor digitorum longus. So moving now from anterior to posterior on the lateral part of the leg. Why aren't we moving anterior to posterior on the medial part of the leg? Because that's bone, right? Now the flesh we're going to hit are muscles on the back. And so I'm going to pick those up for you in the posterior aspect. So extensor digitorum longus, also on the lateral condyle, it shares attachment, you can see, with the tibialis anterior. This one is also attached to the fibula. I am moving posterior, but I'm also moving more lateral. And this one is attached to the phalanges, out on the toes, 2 and 3. This one's also going to do dorsiflexion. Now let me point out to you something that we pointed out when I was doing joints here. Is there any such thing as extension at the ankle? No. What are the 2 joint movements? Dorsiflexion, plantarflexion, okay? What is the name of this muscle telling you? It says extensor, doesn't it? You see the problem I'm having with this? It's like we should say to the anatomists who name these muscles, it's time to make up your mind. Either it's flexion and extension, or it's dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. But they seem to want to have it both ways. You see that? So this is an extensor, I'm sorry. You have to learn its name as the extensor. The next one in line is the pronator longus. Now, we learned this very early in the semester. I pointed out some troublesome words in anatomy, things that, and I point these out as we go, like it can't be coracoid if you want coronoid, right? Spelling problems. We learned regions of anatomy. We learned that there's a piece around our gut, we call that the peritoneum. And there's a region between the external genitalia and the anus we call the perineum. And there's a region on the lateral part of your leg we call the peroneal region. You hear how close those words are to each other? Okay, so this is the peroneus longus. This means lateral crural region, the peroneal region. That's where it is. And so the anatomists think of this muscle as the most lateral one. And you can see it doesn't have a tibial attachment. It's attached to the proximal fibula and then also crosses over to the medial cuneiform to share its attachment with the tibialis anterior. Okay, in order, tibialis anterior, extensor digitorum longus, peroneus longus. Getting more lateral, getting more posterior. All right? The next two muscles we can get to from both ways. This is the fleshy part on the posterior aspect of your leg. And these two that I've got labeled here, 4 and 5, the soleus and the gastrocnemius, these two comprise what we should call the tricep of the leg. In fact, many texts will call these the triceps surae, the muscular tricep of the leg. Now let me point out one more thing. I don't mean to confuse you by doing this, but if I point it out to you, hopefully it'll stick. What do the triceps of the arm do at the elbow?
Extend.
They extend, right? They're extensors. In the anatomist version of extension on the leg, would you have called what this extensor muscle does extension? When dancers or ballet people are referring to extension, what do they think? Pointing your toes or pulling? Plantar or dorsal? Plantar. Okay, but what does the anatomist see as extension?
Dorsal.
Dorsal. You see that? So this muscle here is attached to the lateral condyle of the tibia and the fibula, and then it comes down to the toes on the top of your foot. So when the extensor contracts, what does the foot do? It dorsiflex. Now we would probably have thought of that as flexion. Does everybody see that? I don't mean to confuse you, but you need to see it, right? You need to see it. If you think about it, maybe you'll remember it. Okay, so the triceps of your arm do extension. And we call these muscles, the two heads of the gastrocnemius and the soleus, we call them triceps. And most people would think, when they describe movement at the ankle, what the triceps do as extension. Are you following me? Okay, so these, that helps you remember, this is actually plantar flexion. These three muscles make up the triceps of the leg, and they all have the same tendinous attachment. So just like the triceps of the arm went from the infraglenoid tubercle and the shaft of the humerus and the medial shaft of the humerus down to the olecranon, they all shared olecranon attachment. These three all share calcaneal attachment. So the medial head and the lateral head of the gastrocnemius share an attachment to the calcaneus with the soleus, which attaches to the proximal end of the bones, the tibia and the fibula. So you just move down here. You see it? The gastrocnemius is up on the femur. You just move down onto the tibia and fibula, and the tendons both go to the heel. So they make a thick tendon called the calcaneal tendon. We call it the Achilles tendon, the tendon of the soleus and the gastrocnemius. All right. I warmed you up in your anatomy thinking for the first 15 minutes of class. The rest of the time is yours for review for anatomy and physiology. Okay. At what?
At the joints.
At the joints, okay.
When you say joint cavity,
Okay,
I know that talks about everything within the joint.
okay.
Is that also considered the capsule?
Oh, it's a good question. So, generally speaking, we think of the synovial membrane as lining the cavity, and the capsule forming the outer walls. Yeah. And textbooks will sometimes, you may have noticed this because I know you're carefully studying this. You look at the picture I have on the jaw here. So the lateral ligament here, the big one from the zygomatic arch down to the mandible, which I said is the big one, number one, holding the joint in there. If you notice, it's fused with a piece of tissue that looks just like it, and it's labeled the joint capsule on that picture. They look the same. And I don't know why you couldn't call it the lateral ligament except for this. When you learned histology in this class, I pointed out to you that tendons and ligaments are made of tissue where the collagen is arranged in a regular array, like ropes, really strong. The next picture we looked at in histology was dermis, and the collagen was irregularly arranged. That's what the tissue looks like in the joint capsule. So it's actually different tissue. It's both densely collagenous, but the ligament and the capsule are actually two separate pieces. And the capsule makes the outside house of the joint cavity. A very perceptive question. More? Yes?
Okay, I got a question about the stone, the feeding stone.
Okay.
Okay, I was trying to understand what was the difference between the posterior fontanelle and the posterior lateral fontanelle?
Okay, good question. So she's asking, what is the difference between the posterior fontanelle and the posterior lateral fontanelle? Okay. So can somebody help with that? Where is the posterior fontanelle? At the junction of what two sutures? Sagittal and lambdoid. Right on the back of the occipital bone. What two sutures meet at the posterior lateral fontanelle? The squamous and the lambdoid. So that one, listen to its name. Posterior and posterior lateral. Another one?
Yeah, I have another.
Okay.
Okay, I was trying to figure out what was the difference between the zygomatic process of the temporal bone and the temporal process of the zygomatic bone.
Good. Yeah, so this bone is the temporal bone, and this bone is the zygomatic. And there's a bony connector that runs across here, leaving a gap that the temporalis goes through, right? There's a hole on the other side of it. So it makes an arch to your cheekbone. The temporal makes an arch to the zygomatic. So the portion of the bone that's zygomatic, that connects there, we call the temporal process. And the portion of the temporal that projects there, we call the zygomatic process. Just name the process for the bone it connects to. Yes, ma'am.
The tibia and the common fibular nerve come from the sacral plexus.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. You're right. From the sacral plexus. Yes, correct. So the two major nerves of the lumbar are the femoral and the obturator. And the two major nerves of the sacral are the tibial and common fibular. And so the tibial nerve was the one that I really emphasized to you. Okay, so the tibial picks up 3 of the 4 hamstring muscles.
And it's a branch off of the sciatic.
It's a branch of the sciatic. In fact, the sciatic nerve, if you grab the sciatic nerve, in a dissection on the back of the leg, near where it comes out near the gluteus maximus there, and you take your probe and you run it along the sciatic, you can clearly see it's actually two nerves. Yes, sir.
So the clavicle keeps the shoulder lateral, but what keeps the shoulder from falling? Is it the corbicularis ligament?
That is correct. So that's a ligament that I emphasized to you coming off the conoid process of the clavicle. So what keeps the shoulder out here? The clavicle. What keeps your arm here? What keeps it here is the clavicle. What keeps it here? What prevents the arm from just falling down here? This is the ligament, the coracoclavicular ligament. That's a very important attachment. Okay. Your classmates appreciate you. They're not going to tell you, but I will. I know they appreciate what you're doing.
The lateral collateral ligament.
Okay.
Just listening back to the lecture, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how does that attachment help for the head of the femur not to move out? It doesn't.
The lateral collateral ligament is only a knee support
The lateral
to prevent the lateral sliding of the femur on top of the tibia. That's right. Rodney?
We have to know what laminectomy is.
Yeah, I didn't answer that question, did I? You asked me that on the text message, and I'm not going to ask you a clinical question about laminectomy. Sorry about that. I did answer your mandibular foramen question. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Good. Your classmates appreciate you. Yes? The two of you.
Said in
Yes.
class, okay, I remember you said in the, I think it was the last lecture, you said you would ask a question like, where is the, greater trochanter and that's in relation to the lesser trochanter? Are you gonna ask like questions like where's the greater tubercle in relation to the lesser tubercle?
Sure.
Mhm.
That would be a great question. To compare the anterior arrangement on the arm, where the anterior tubercle is the lesser, whereas on the leg, the lesser trochanter is posterior. It's a different arrangement.
So, okay, so even though you can see the greater tubercle on the anterior aspect, like the portion of it.
The lesser, you mean?
Yeah, well, hold on, let me show you.
Okay. Go ahead and ask your question while we're waiting.
For the rotator cuff, you want us to know them in order. Is that correct, from posterior to anterior?
Yes.
Okay.
I did not do that in very many places. That is an important location.
And the easiest way to dislocate your shoulder is anterior, is that right?
Anterior and inferior. That's right. And the rotator cuff explains that.
Because there's more.
There's more of it, posterior and superior. Yeah.
Okay, on the humerus, you can see the, like the little portion.
On the
of
femur
greater-
or the humerus? You got humerus, okay?
Yeah, you can see the greater tubercle on like, you can see a portion of it on the anterior aspect.
You can.
So that's why I was asking like.
Yeah, the greater tubercle is a large knot that encompasses, you can see it from the front and the back.
But it will always be posterior, right? I mean, well, yeah, like, 'cause it's on the posterior surface right here, and then you can see it on the anterior surface right here. So that's
Okay,
why-
yeah, it's just because it's so large, yeah.
Okay, so it would still be posterior, right?
Well, no, I mean, you can see it from the anterior side also. I was talking about the lesser tubercle. The lesser tubercle is an anterior piece.
Yeah, I know about the lesser tubercle, but, like, if you ask the question, like, where is the greater tubercle in relation to the lesser tubercle?
Okay.
Like, Like
It's
he would-
superior
and-
and lateral.
okay,
Yeah? Yeah. Don't overthink these things. People do this all the time. I'm not trying to trick you with these words. Just describe them for what they are. It seems tricky because I guess there's so many of them, but
So going back to that question, so the knots on the top of your lateral and posterior
the greater tubercle.
to the okay.
Yeah. But she's pointing out that you can see it from the front too. Yeah. Okay. What else? Okay, Ms. McKee.
I have in my notes that 50% of the blood from the brain is supplied by blood vessels that come through the transverse foramen.
Mhm.
Did we discuss where the other 50% blood comes from?
Yes, it happened in another moment in class, but I'm glad you brought it up because that's an important observation, yes? So 50% of the blood to your brain travels through the transverse foramen of the cervical bones in the vertebral arteries. The other 50% goes through the carotid canals of the temporal bone. And those are the internal carotid arteries. Did that click from our temporal bone discussion? But it's good to put those together, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the ligament that attaches to the fovea capitis?
To the what?
Fovea capitis?
The fovea capitis. Yeah, you don't need to know that. It's called the round ligament of the fovea or the ligamentum teres. I don't. It's okay. You don't need to know that. I was just trying to get you interested in the head of the femur. Yes, sir.
For the femoral triangle, you said we need to know the borders and the attachments for the borders.
Yes.
One thing I don't have is the inguinal ligament attachment.
The anterior superior iliac spine and the tubercle of the pubic bone. So the anterior superior iliac spine will share its attachment, since it's in a triangle, right, with the sartorius. And the tubercle of the pubic bone will share its attachment with the adductor longus. The sartorius then will proceed across the leg to attach to the medial proximal tibia. The adductor longus will travel to the adductor knot on the back of the femur, known as the, no, what is the line that does adduction? This adduction, the linea aspera, adduction. The linea aspera does adduction, yeah. Good. Yes, sir.
Earlier, you were talking about flexion and adduction. Is there any of those kind of questions on the test, like you hold out your arm in a certain way, and you have to figure out whether it's adduction or flexion?
There will be no pictures on the test, so I will describe some of those things with words. know what those are. Okay.